The morning sun cast long shadows across the dusty road as Marcus Thompson drove his pickup truck toward the Henderson ranch. The advertisement in the local paper had been simple enough: mare for sale, good bloodline, reasonable price. What it didn't mention was the 40-minute drive through winding country roads that seemed to lead nowhere. Marcus had been searching for the right horse for months. His daughter Sarah had been begging for a mare ever since she turned 16, and he'd finally saved enough money to make her dream come true. The Henderson Ranch had a reputation for quality horses, though Marcus had never met the owner personally. As he pulled up to the weathered gate, Marcus noticed how quiet everything seemed. The ranch looked well maintained from the outside, with white-painted fences stretching across rolling hills and a large red barn that had seen better days. A few horses grazed peacefully in the distance, their tails swishing away the morning flies. He parked near the main house and stepped out, his boots crunching on the gravel driveway. The silence was almost unsettling. Usually, ranches were bustling with activity, but this place felt frozen in time. Marcus checked his watch, 9:30 in the morning, exactly when he'd arranged to meet Mr. Henderson. Walking toward the front porch, Marcus called out, "Hello, Mr. Henderson?" His voice seemed to disappear into the vast landscape. He waited a few moments before trying again, louder this time. Still no response. Maybe Henderson was in the barn, Marcus thought. The old rancher had sounded friendly enough on the phone, though his voice had carried a strange tension that Marcus couldn't quite place. People out here were often a bit eccentric, so he hadn't thought much of it at the time. The barn doors were partially open, and Marcus could hear movement inside. As he approached, the familiar smell of hay and horses filled his nostrils. "Mr. Henderson," he called again as he stepped into the dim interior. The barn was larger than it appeared from outside, with stalls running along both sides and a loft overhead filled with hay bales. Dust motes danced in the shafts of sunlight streaming through the gaps in the wooden walls. Marcus could see several horses in their stalls, but still no sign of the ranch owner. "Back here!" came a gruff voice from the far end of the barn. Marcus walked down the center aisle, passing stalls with beautiful horses that looked up at him with curious eyes. The voice had come from somewhere near the feed room at the back of the barn. As Marcus rounded the corner, he found an older man in worn jeans and a faded flannel shirt, examining a bay mare. The man looked to be in his 60s, with graying hair and weathered hands that spoke of decades of hard work. This had to be Henderson. "You must be Thompson," the man said without looking up from the horse. "This here's the mare I told you about. She's got good breeding, strong legs, gentle temperament." Marcus studied the horse. She was beautiful, a rich brown coat with a black mane and intelligent eyes. Everything he'd been looking for. "She's perfect," Marcus said. "My daughter will love her." Henderson nodded and began discussing the mare's history, her training, and her care requirements. As they talked, Marcus noticed the man seemed nervous, constantly glancing toward the back corner of the barn, where large feed barrels were stored. Every few minutes, Henderson would pause mid-sentence, as if listening for something. "Is everything all right?" Marcus asked during one of these pauses. Henderson's eyes darted to the feed barrels again before he forced a smile. "Just fine. Ranch life, you know. Always something that needs attention." But Marcus could tell something was wrong. There was sweat on Henderson's forehead despite the cool morning air, and his hands shook slightly as he stroked the mare's neck. The old rancher kept positioning himself between Marcus and the back corner of the barn, as if blocking his view. Marcus tried to focus on the horse, asking about her age and riding experience, but he couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't alone in the barn. There was something about the way Henderson kept glancing over his shoulder, something about the tension in his voice that set Marcus on edge. As they continued their conversation, Marcus thought he heard something, a faint sound that might have been a cough or a sob, quickly muffled. Henderson immediately began talking louder, pointing out the mare's fine points with forced enthusiasm. "She's been well cared for," Henderson was saying, but his voice seemed strained. "Rides smooth, responds well to commands." Marcus nodded, but his attention was divided. That sound had definitely come from somewhere near the feed barrels. He tried to get a better look at that corner of the barn, but Henderson kept moving, subtly blocking his line of sight. The transaction should have been straightforward. Marcus had the money, Henderson had the horse, and they'd already agreed on the price over the phone. But something felt off about the whole situation. The ranch owner's behavior was becoming more erratic by the minute, and those strange noises from the back of the barn were impossible to ignore. "Maybe I should take a look around the property," Marcus suggested. "You know, get a feel for where she's been living." No need for that, Henderson said quickly. She spent most of her time in the paddock, healthy as can be. But as Henderson spoke, Marcus heard it again. Definitely a human sound this time, like someone trying to call out but being prevented from doing so. His blood ran cold as the implications began to sink in. Henderson noticed Marcus's expression change and took a step closer to him. You seem distracted, Thompson. Is there a problem with the mare? Marcus forced himself to stay calm. She's beautiful. He started to move toward the feed barrels, but Henderson quickly stepped in front of him. Nothing back there but feed and supplies, the older man said, but there was something dangerous in his eyes now. We should probably finalize this deal. I've got other business to attend to. The atmosphere in the barn had shifted completely. What had started as a simple horse purchase was turning into something much more sinister. Marcus's mind raced as he tried to figure out his next move. He was alone on an isolated ranch with a man who was clearly hiding something serious. The mare whinnied softly, as if sensing the tension between the two men. In the silence that followed, Marcus heard the sound again. Unmistakably human, unmistakably desperate. Someone was behind those feed barrels, and from the way Henderson was acting, they weren't there by choice. Marcus knew he had to make a decision. He could pretend he hadn't heard anything, buy the horse, and leave. It would be the safe choice, or he could investigate further and potentially put himself in serious danger. But if someone needed help, could he really just walk away? The old rancher was watching him carefully now, and Marcus realized that his reaction in the next few moments would determine not only his own fate, but possibly the fate of whoever was hidden in the shadows of the barn. Henderson's hand moved slowly toward his belt, and Marcus caught a glimpse of what might have been a weapon. The morning sun streaming through the barn door suddenly felt very far away, and Marcus understood that his simple trip to buy a horse had just become something much more complicated and dangerous. The mare stamped her feet nervously, and in the distance Marcus could hear the faint sound of wind moving through the grass outside. Inside the barn, however, everything had gone deathly quiet except for the rapid beating of his own heart and the almost imperceptible sounds coming from behind those feed barrels. Whatever was happening here, Marcus realized he was now part of it whether he wanted to be or not. The question was what he was going to do about it, and whether he would have the chance to do anything at all. Marcus took a deep breath and made his choice. You know what, Henderson? I think I heard one of your horses making noise back there. Might want to check on them. Before the older man could stop him, Marcus stepped quickly around him toward the feed barrels. Don't! Henderson shouted, but it was too late. Behind the largest barrel, partially hidden by shadows and old feed sacks, Marcus saw something that made his stomach drop. A young woman, probably in her early 20s, was sitting on the ground with her back against the barn wall. Her wrists were bound with rope, and a piece of cloth had been tied around her mouth as a gag. Her clothes were dirty and torn, and her eyes were wide with a mixture of fear and desperate hope. Jesus Christ! Marcus whispered, immediately moving toward her. Henderson grabbed his arm roughly. You shouldn't have done that, Thompson. You should have just bought the horse and left. Marcus shook off the older man's grip and knelt beside the woman. Her dark hair was matted, and there were bruises on her face that looked several days old. She was trying to say something through the gag, her eyes pleading with him. How long has she been here? Marcus demanded, turning to face Henderson. The old rancher was standing behind him now, and Marcus could see the handle of a pistol tucked into his belt. That's not your concern, Henderson replied coldly. This is a private matter. Marcus carefully removed the gag from the woman's mouth. She gasped and immediately started speaking in rapid, panicked whispers. Please help me. He's been keeping me here for 5 days. I was hitchhiking and he offered me a ride, but then he brought me here and... Her voice broke. What's your name? Marcus asked gently while working on the ropes around her wrists. Lisa. Lisa Martinez. I was trying to get to Sacramento to see my sister. Tears were streaming down her face. Please don't let him hurt me anymore. Henderson took a step closer, his hand now resting on his weapon. Thompson, you need to understand something. This girl is trouble. She's been stealing from people, causing problems. I was just holding her until the authorities could deal with her. Marcus looked at Lisa's condition, at the fear in her eyes, at the crude way she'd been restrained. This isn't how you hold someone for the authorities, Henderson. This is kidnapping. You don't understand the situation, the older man said, but his voice lacked conviction. Marcus managed to loosen the ropes around Lisa's wrists and helped her to her feet. She was unsteady, probably from being in the same position for hours, and she clung to his arm for support. "We're leaving," Marcus said firmly. "Both of us." Henderson pulled out his pistol and pointed it at them. "I can't let that happen. Too much is at stake here." The barn suddenly felt much smaller and darker. Marcus positioned himself between Henderson and Lisa, his mind racing through options. The older man was armed and desperate, which made him extremely dangerous. But Marcus couldn't just abandon Lisa to whatever Henderson had planned for her. "What did you think was going to happen here?" Marcus asked, trying to keep his voice calm. Someone was going to find out eventually. Henderson's hands were shaking as he held the gun. "I didn't plan for any of this. It just happened. She saw things she wasn't supposed to see, and I panicked." "What things?" Marcus pressed. Lisa spoke up from behind him, her voice stronger now. "I saw him with other girls in the basement of the house. He's been doing this for a while." The revelation hit Marcus like a physical blow. This wasn't an isolated incident. Henderson had been using his remote ranch as a base for something much more systematic and horrific. "That's not true," Henderson said, but his denial sounded hollow. "She's lying." Marcus looked around the barn, searching for anything he could use as a weapon or a way to escape. The main doors were behind Henderson, but there might be another way out through the back or sides of the building. "Listen, Henderson," Marcus said carefully. "You let us walk out of here right now, and we can work something out. Maybe Lisa's confused about what she saw. Maybe we can all just forget this happened." For a moment, hope flickered in the older man's eyes, but then his expression hardened again. "You think I'm stupid. The moment you leave here, you'll call the police. I've worked too hard to build this place to let it all fall apart now." Lisa whispered urgently in Marcus's ear. "There's a door in the tack room. It leads outside to the side of the barn." Marcus nodded slightly, then addressed Henderson again. "You're right. This is your place, and I don't want any trouble. But holding us here is only going to make things worse. Let Lisa go, and I'll stay. Use me as collateral while you figure out what to do next." "No," Lisa said immediately. "I'm not leaving you here." Henderson looked confused by the offer. "Why would you do that?" "Because I have a daughter," Marcus said honestly. "She's about Lisa's age. If this was her in trouble, I'd want someone to help." The older man's resolve seemed to waver for a moment. Maybe he had children or grandchildren of his own. Maybe there was still some part of him that remembered what it meant to be human. But then something changed in his expression. "Nice try, Thompson, but I've come too far to turn back now. Both of you are going to walk to the house, and you're going to do exactly what I tell you." Marcus knew they were running out of options. Henderson was clearly beyond reasoning with, and every minute they spent in the barn was another minute for the situation to get worse. "The tack room," he whispered to Lisa. "When I create a distraction, run for that door." She shook her head. "I'm not leaving you. You have to. Get to safety and call for help. It's the only way we both survive this." Before Lisa could argue further, Marcus suddenly lunged toward Henderson, gambling that the older man's reflexes might be slow enough to give Lisa a chance to escape. The gun went off with a deafening crack in the enclosed space. Marcus felt something burn across his shoulder but kept moving forward. Henderson stumbled backwards, surprised by the sudden attack. "Run!" Marcus shouted to Lisa. She hesitated for just a moment, then sprinted toward the back of the barn. Marcus tackled Henderson around the waist and they both went down hard onto the dirt floor. The gun skittered away into the shadows. Henderson was stronger than he looked, and they wrestled fiercely in the dust and hay. Marcus could feel blood seeping from the graze on his shoulder, but adrenaline kept him fighting. "You stupid fool," Henderson gasped as they struggled. "You have no idea what you've gotten yourself into." Marcus managed to pin the older man's arms down. "I know enough. I know you've been hurting innocent people." Through the chaos, Marcus heard the sound of a door slamming somewhere in the barn. Hopefully Lisa had made it outside and was already running for help. Henderson suddenly went limp beneath him. "It's too late anyway," he said with a strange smile. "Even if she gets away, even if she calls the police, there are others. This is bigger than just me and this ranch." The words sent a chill through Marcus. What had he and Lisa stumbled into? And if Henderson was telling the truth, would Lisa really be safe even if she escaped? From outside, Marcus could hear the sound of his truck engine starting. Lisa had found his keys and was getting away. At least she had a chance now. Henderson laughed bitterly. "You think you're a hero, don't you? You have no idea what you've just destroyed. Marcus held him down firmly. Whatever this is, it needed to be destroyed. The sound of his truck faded into the distance, and the barn fell quiet except for their heavy breathing. Marcus knew that police would arrive eventually, but he also knew that Henderson's words about others being involved might mean this was far from over. As he waited for help to arrive, Marcus couldn't stop thinking about Lisa's terrified face and Henderson's cryptic warnings. Whatever network of criminal activity his ranch had been part of, dismantling it was going to be much more complicated than just rescuing one young woman. But for now, Lisa was free, and getting help, that was what mattered most. Everything else could be dealt with later, one step at a time. 20 minutes later, Marcus heard the sound of multiple vehicles approaching the ranch. Through a gap in the barn wall, he could see police cars, an ambulance, and his own pickup truck coming up the dusty road. Lisa had made it to safety and brought help. Henderson had stopped struggling and lay quietly beneath Marcus, but there was something unsettling about his calm demeanor. "They won't find anything, you know," he said with quiet confidence. "I'm very careful about cleaning up after myself." Marcus kept the older man pinned down as police officers entered the barn with their weapons drawn. Within moments, they had Henderson in handcuffs and were checking Marcus's shoulder wound, which turned out to be just a graze. Detective Sarah Chen, a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense attitude, took charge of the scene. She interviewed Marcus and Lisa separately, taking detailed notes about everything they had experienced. Lisa mentioned that Henderson said something about other girls, Detective Chen told Marcus during his interview. Did he elaborate on that? Marcus repeated everything he could remember, including Henderson's comments about this being bigger than just him and the ranch. The detective's expression grew more serious with each detail. "We're going to need you both to stay in town for a few days while we investigate," she said. "This might be connected to several missing persons cases we've been working on." Over the next 48 hours, the truth began to emerge. A search of Henderson's property revealed a hidden basement beneath the main house, equipped with multiple rooms that had clearly been used to hold people against their will. DNA evidence linked the basement to at least 6 young women who had disappeared over the past 2 years while hitchhiking or traveling alone through the area. Lisa was incredibly brave during her interviews with police. Despite her trauma, she provided detailed information about what she had seen and heard during her 5 days of captivity. She described hearing other voices in the house late at night, conversations about moving people to different locations, and phone calls that suggested Henderson was part of a larger operation. "He wasn't the boss," Lisa told Detective Chen. "I could tell from the way he talked on the phone. Someone else was giving him orders." The investigation expanded rapidly. The federal agents joined the case when they realized the scope of what they were dealing with. Henderson's ranch was apparently one stop in a human trafficking network that stretched across multiple states. Marcus found himself staying at the same small motel as Lisa, while they both provided ongoing assistance to the investigation. He called his daughter Sarah to explain why he would be delayed, though he kept the details vague to avoid frightening her. "Dad, are you okay?" Sarah asked during one of their phone calls. "You sound different." "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just dealing with some unexpected complications. I'll be home soon, and I promise I'll find you that horse we talked about." "I don't care about the horse anymore, Dad. I just want you to come home safe." The simple honesty in his daughter's voice reminded Marcus of why he had acted the way he did. Family was everything, and Lisa was someone's daughter too. On the 3rd day, Lisa knocked on his motel room door. She looked better than she had in the barn. Clean clothes, hair washed, the worst of the bruises beginning to fade, but her eyes still carried the weight of what she'd experienced. "I wanted to thank you," she said. "The police told me you could have just walked away and pretended you didn't hear anything." Marcus invited her to sit down. "I couldn't have done that. I keep thinking about my own daughter and what I'd want someone to do if she was in trouble." Lisa nodded. "Detective Chen told me they found evidence of other girls. Some of them might still be alive because of what we did." The thought was both hopeful and heartbreaking. Marcus wondered how many victims might have been saved if someone had acted sooner. But he tried not to dwell on what-ifs. "What happens now?" he asked. "I'm going to Sacramento to stay with my sister while this all gets sorted out," Lisa said. "The FBI thinks Henderson will eventually give up information about the other people involved, but it might take time." "And you'll be safe?" She managed a small smile. "They're putting me in a witness protection program until the trials are over. It's scary, But it's better than. She didn't need to finish the sentence. Detective Chen arrived at the motel that evening with an update. Henderson had finally started talking, probably hoping for a reduced sentence. The network he was part of was even larger than they had initially suspected, with operations in 7 states. We've already made 12 additional arrests based on his information, she told Marcus and Lisa. And we've located 3 young women who are alive and safe now. The news was overwhelming. What had started as a simple attempt to buy a horse had uncovered a criminal enterprise that had destroyed numerous lives. There's something else, Detective Chen continued. Henderson admitted that Lisa wasn't his first victim at the ranch. We found remains on the property that matched 2 women who went missing last year. The revelation hit Lisa hard. She had been lucky to survive when others hadn't. Marcus could see her struggling with survivor's guilt, wondering why she had been spared when others weren't. You can't think that way, Marcus told her gently. What happened to those other women wasn't your fault, and surviving doesn't make you responsible for their deaths. But if I had been stronger, if I had fought back sooner— You were incredibly strong, Marcus interrupted. You survived long enough for help to arrive, and you had the courage to provide the information that's going to save other people. Detective Chen nodded in agreement. The intelligence you've both provided has been invaluable. This network might have continued operating for years if you hadn't stumbled onto it. A week later, as the initial phase of the investigation concluded, Marcus and Lisa prepared to return to their respective lives. The experience had changed them both in ways they were still trying to understand. I keep thinking about that Mare, Lisa said as they said goodbye at the bus station. In all of this horror, she was just there being beautiful and innocent. It seems like a symbol of something. Marcus had thought about the Mare too. He decided not to try to purchase any horses from the Henderson estate, which was being liquidated to pay for victim compensation. Instead, he would find Sarah a horse from someone whose business wasn't built on suffering. Maybe she represents hope, Marcus suggested. The idea that beautiful, innocent things can survive even in dark places. Lisa hugged him goodbye. I'm going to write to you sometimes, if that's okay. I want to know that there are still good people in the world. I'd like that, Marcus replied. And Lisa? When this is all over, when you're ready to move forward with your life, remember that you're stronger than you know. The bus pulled away, taking Lisa toward her new life in protective custody. Marcus stood on the platform for a long time, thinking about the strange turns that life could take. When he finally arrived home, Sarah was waiting for him with dinner and 100 questions she was too polite to ask. He told her a simplified version of what had happened, that he'd helped someone who was in trouble, and it had taken longer than expected. Are you okay, Dad? She asked, studying his face. I will be, he said honestly. And Sarah, I want you to know that if you're ever in trouble, anywhere in the world, I'll move heaven and earth to help you. She hugged him tightly. I know, Dad. That's just who you are. 6 months later, Marcus received a letter from Lisa. She was doing well in her new life, attending college and studying social work. She wanted to help other trafficking survivors rebuild their lives. The trials were ongoing, but the network had been largely dismantled. Dozens of victims had been rescued, and many more would be spared because the criminal organization no longer existed. Henderson had been sentenced to life in prison without parole. He never showed remorse for his actions, but his cooperation had led to justice for many of his victims. Marcus kept Lisa's letters in a box on his desk, a reminder that sometimes ordinary people are called upon to do extraordinary things. He never regretted his decision to investigate those sounds behind the feed barrels, even though it had put him in danger. Sarah eventually got her horse, a gentle bay mare from a reputable breeder who donated the animal when he heard about Marcus's role in the trafficking case. The mare was beautiful and kind, everything a horse should be. Sometimes when Marcus watched Sarah riding, he thought about the mare at Henderson's ranch and wondered what had become of her. He hoped she had found a good home with people who would treat her with the love and respect she deserved. The experience had taught Marcus that evil could hide in the most ordinary places, but it had also reinforced his belief that good people have an obligation to act when they encounter injustice. The world was full of both darkness and light, and sometimes the difference between the two came down to the choices made by individuals in crucial moments. He never forgot Lisa's courage or the sound of her voice saying thank you. In helping her, he had also helped himself understand what kind of person he wanted to be. Someone who would never walk away when someone needed help, no matter how dangerous or complicated the situation might become.